The van's heater had stopped working somewhere around 3rd Avenue, and now Emma Chen's fingers were so numb she could barely grip the steering wheel. February in Chicago turned everything into shades of gray. Sky, buildings, even the people hunched against the wind looked colorless. She pulled up to the address scrawled on the delivery slip, double-checking the numbers against the elegant townhouse in front of her. 2847 North Astor Street, the Gold Coast, where old money lived behind iron gates and security systems that cost more than Emma's entire year's rent. She delivered flowers here before, always to addresses that made her acutely aware of the $12 in her checking account and the overdue notices stuffed in her kitchen drawer. The funeral arrangement in the back of her van was beautiful, she had to admit. White lilies and roses, eucalyptus branches, a spray of baby's breath that caught the gray afternoon light. The card read simple condolences for Margaret Castellano, beloved mother and grandmother. Emma had assembled it herself this morning, her boss too hungover to come in, leaving her to handle everything alone. Again, she grabbed the arrangement, heavy enough that she had to brace it against her hip, and made her way up the stone steps. The townhouse loomed above her, all dark brick and arched windows, the kind of place that had probably stood here for 100 years watching the city change around it. If you're enjoying this story so far, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. I love hearing from you. Emma's finger had barely left the doorbell when she heard footsteps inside. Fast, purposeful footsteps that didn't match the slow grief of someone receiving funeral flowers. The door swung open, and she found herself staring directly at a gun. The man holding it was tall, maybe 6'3", dressed in a black suit that probably cost what Emma made in 3 months. Dark hair, darker eyes that assessed her in the half-second it took her brain to catch up with what she was seeing. The gun was silver, large, pointing directly at her chest with the kind of casual steadiness that suggested he knew exactly how to use it. Emma's mouth went dry. The flower arrangement slipped from her numb fingers, crashing to the stone steps in an explosion of water, glass, and white petals. "Who sent you?" His voice was low, controlled, with an edge that made her heart slam against her ribs. I'm just delivering flowers," Emma stammered, her hands instinctively rising. "I'm a florist, from Petal and Stem on Halsted. This is 2847 North Astor, right?" His eyes narrowed, scanning past her to the street, then back to her face. "You're alone?" "Yes, just me. I deliver flowers. That's all I do." Her voice was shaking now, matching the tremor in her hands. "Please, I think there's been a mistake." Behind him, another man appeared in the doorway. Broader, older, with a scar running from his temple to his jaw. His hand rested inside his jacket. On another gun, Emma realized with fresh terror. "Boss," the scarred man said quietly. "Want me to handle this?" The first man, the boss, held up one hand, still watching Emma with that unnerving intensity. "Who's the arrangement for?" "Margaret Castellano." Emma's voice came out as barely a whisper. "The funeral is tomorrow. The order came in this morning with this address. I'm just delivering what my boss told me to deliver." Something flickered across the boss's face. Not recognition, something darker. He lowered the gun slightly. "There's no Margaret Castellano here. You have the wrong address." "I'm so sorry. I'll just—" Emma started to back away, her shoe crunching on broken glass. "I'll go. Right now. I'm sorry about the mess. I'll come back and clean it up, I promise." "Wait!" The command froze her mid-step. The boss pulled a phone from his pocket, never taking his eyes off her. "Marco, check the order records for Margaret Castellano. Every florist, every funeral home in the city. I want to know who placed this order and where it was supposed to go." He listened for a moment, then, "Now. I don't care if you have to wake people up." Emma's heart hammered, so hard she felt dizzy. This wasn't just a wrong address. This was something else entirely, something that involved men with guns and the kind of caution that came from real danger. The boss ended the call and studied Emma again. "What's your name?" "Emma Chen. You work for Petal and Stem?" "Yes. 7 years. I'm just a florist. I arrange flowers, I deliver them. That's all." "Show me your phone." "What?" "Your phone. Show me." With shaking hands, Emma pulled her battered iPhone from her coat pocket and held it out. He took it, scrolling through her recent calls and messages with the efficiency of someone who knew exactly what he was looking for. After a moment, he handed it back. Your van. Is that it? He nodded toward the street where her delivery van sat. Petal and stem, painted in faded letters on the side. Yes. How long have you been driving that route? I don't have a route. I deliver wherever my boss tells me to. Emma's survival instinct finally kicked and passed the fear. Look, I can show you the order slip. My boss's handwriting is terrible. He probably wrote down the wrong address. This is just a mistake. An honest mistake. The boss and the scarred man exchanged a look that Emma couldn't read. Some silent communication passed between them. Let me see the slip, the boss said. Emma fumbled in her pocket and pulled out the crumpled paper. Her boss Michael's handwriting sprawled across it. Margaret Castellano, 2847, North Astor Street, funeral arrangement, deliver by 3 p.m. The boss studied it, then looked at Emma. The 7. Could that be a 1? Emma looked closer. The number was smudged, the loop of a 7 barely distinguishable from a hastily written 1. Oh God, it's 2841, isn't it? Not 2847. 6 doors down. The Hendersons lived there. Margaret was Charles Henderson's mother. The boss handed back the slip, and for the first time, something that might have been human appeared in his expression. Not quite sympathy, but a recognition of genuine error versus intentional threat. You really did just get the address wrong. I'm so sorry. I should have double-checked. My boss was... Emma stopped herself before saying hung over to a man who just held her at gunpoint. He was having a difficult morning. The handwriting was worse than usual. The boss's phone rang. He answered, listened, then said, confirmed? Another pause. Good. Thanks, Marco. He ended the call and looked at Emma. The order was legitimate. Placed by Charles Henderson's daughter yesterday afternoon for delivery to 2841 North Astor. Your boss transposed the numbers. Relief flooded through Emma, so powerfully her knees almost buckled. Then I should go. Deliver these to the right address. Again, I'm so sorry about the confusion and the mess. Leave the mess. My people will handle it. The boss finally holstered his gun, the movement smooth and practiced. But Miss Chen, I need you to understand something. Emma waited, her heart still racing. This neighborhood has seen some trouble lately. Threats against certain residents. When you rang that doorbell, I was expecting someone else. Someone dangerous. His dark eyes held hers. You knocked on the wrong door at exactly the wrong time. I understand. It won't happen again. See that it doesn't. He paused, then added, drive carefully. The streets are icy. It was such a normal thing to say after pointing a gun at her that Emma almost laughed. Instead, she nodded, backed down the steps, and practically ran to her van. Her hands shook so badly it took 3 tries to get the key in the ignition. As she pulled away from the curb, she glanced in the rearview mirror. The boss stood on the steps, phone to his ear again, while the scarred man gathered the broken vase and scattered flowers. Even from this distance, she could see the tension in the boss's shoulders, the way he scanned the street like he was still expecting an attack. What kind of life did someone lead where they answer their door ready to kill? Emma drove the 6 houses down to 2841 North Astor, where an elderly woman with kind eyes and tear-stained cheeks accepted a replacement arrangement that Emma assembled from the emergency supplies she kept in the van. The woman pressed a $20 tip into Emma's hand and thanked her for the beautiful flowers. Emma drove back to the shop in a daze, her mind unable to reconcile the gentle grief at one door with the lethal readiness at another. She didn't tell her boss about the gun. Didn't mention the wrong address, or the man who thought she was a threat. Michael barely looked up from his phone when she returned, just grunted acknowledgement that the delivery had been completed. That evening, Emma sat in the small apartment above the shop that she shared with her grandmother, Papa, trying to focus on the accounting books for the shop. Numbers blurred on the page. All she could see was that gun, those cold eyes, the way he'd assessed her as a potential threat in less than a second. You're quiet tonight, her grandmother observed in Cantonese, settling into her chair with her knitting. At 72, Papa still had the sharp awareness of someone who'd survived poverty, revolution, and immigration. Something happened. Just a difficult delivery. Emma closed the ledger. The lie sat uncomfortably on her tongue, but what would she even say? I knocked on the wrong door and a man pointed a gun at me? Her grandmother would never let her leave the apartment again. Difficult how? Wrong address. Got it sorted out. Papa's needles clicked steadily. You have that look, like when you were 16, and tried to tell me you weren't worried about college applications. Emma managed to smile. I'm fine, Papa. Really. But she wasn't fine. She kept replaying the moment that door had opened, the casual way he'd raised that gun, the controlled violence barely leashed beneath expensive clothes and perfect posture. She'd stumbled into something today, glimpsed a world that existed parallel to hers but operated by completely different rules. And the worst part was the small, traitorous corner of her mind that kept returning to the moment when he'd lowered the gun. When something in his expression had shifted from threat assessment to something almost human. When he told her to drive carefully on icy streets like he actually cared whether she made it home safely. Emma shook her head, pushing the thoughts away. She was being ridiculous. He was a dangerous man in a dangerous situation who'd almost shot her over a flower delivery. There was nothing to romanticize about that. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Miss Chen, this is Marco Rossi. I work for Mr. Castellano. He wanted me to confirm that you arrived home safely after today's incident. Emma stared at the message. He'd had someone track down her phone number. Had someone checking on her. She typed back, I'm home. Thank you for asking. The response came immediately. Mr. Castellano also wanted to compensate you for the damaged arrangement and any distress caused. Someone will deliver payment to your shop tomorrow. That's not necessary, Emma typed. It was my mistake with the address. Mr. Castellano insists. Have a good evening, Miss Chen. The conversation ended. Emma sat holding her phone, that uncomfortable feeling growing in her chest. Compensation for distress. Payment delivered to her shop. These weren't the actions of someone who'd simply made a mistake. These were the actions of someone used to managing situations, controlling narratives, ensuring loose ends were tied up neatly. And somehow, she'd become a loose end. The next morning, Emma opened the shop at 7 as usual. February sunlight filtered through the windows, catching on the glass vases and making the roses glow like they were lit from within. She was processing a wedding order when the bell above the door chimed. A man in a dark suit entered. Not the scarred man from yesterday. Someone new, younger, with the same controlled awareness that marked him as part of that other world. Emma Chen, he asked. That's me. He set a manila envelope on the counter. From Mr. Castellano. Compensation for yesterday's incident. Emma didn't touch the envelope. I told Marco it wasn't necessary. Mr. Castellano insists. The man's tone suggested this wasn't negotiable. He also wanted me to convey his apologies for the confusion. He hopes this resolves the matter to your satisfaction. The man left before Emma could respond. She stared at the envelope for a full minute before opening it. Inside were 10 crisp $100 bills and a handwritten note on heavy cardstock. Miss Chen, please accept my apologies for yesterday's misunderstanding. The fault was entirely mine. I hope this compensates for the damaged arrangement and any distress my reaction caused. The neighborhood has been experiencing some difficulties lately, which explains but does not excuse my behavior when you arrived. I trust this matter is now closed. However, should you ever need assistance of any kind, you may contact Marco Rossi at the number below. Respectfully, Dante Castellano. A phone number was written beneath the signature. Emma read the note 3 times. The handwriting was elegant, educated, the kind of penmanship they didn't teach anymore. The apology was formal but seemed genuine. The offer of assistance was, what exactly? A courtesy. A way to ensure her silence. And the name. Dante Castellano. She'd heard that name before, whispered in the kinds of conversations people had in dim restaurants and closed offices. One of Chicago's oldest families. Old money, old power, old secrets. Emma tucked the money and note back into the envelope and shoved it in her desk drawer. She should return it. She'd want nothing to do with a man who answered doors with guns and sent associates to deliver $1,000 apologies. But rent was due in a week. Her grandmother's medication cost $300 a month. The van needed new tires before it failed inspection. $1,000 wasn't just money, it was breathing room, safety net, the difference between surviving and drowning. She could keep it, Accept the apology, take the payment, and never think about Dante Castellano again. Their worlds had intersected for one strange, terrifying moment, and now they would diverge back to their separate tracks. That's what logic said, but Emma had grown up learning to read people, to notice what they didn't say as much as what they did. And that note, with its careful phrasing and offer of assistance, suggested this wasn't over. Not really. Dante Castellano had seen her, catalogued her, remembered her, and in a world where wrong addresses could end with guns pointed at your chest, being remembered by someone like him might be the most dangerous thing of all. Emma closed the drawer and returned to the wedding order, trying to lose herself in the familiar rhythm of stems and wire and ribbon. But her mind kept drifting to dark eyes and controlled violence, and the way he told her to drive carefully, like maybe some part of him had actually been concerned for her safety. The bell above the door chimed again. Emma looked up, half expecting another suited associate with another envelope. Instead, a young mother entered with 2 children, wanting flowers for a birthday party. Emma smiled, helped them pick out cheerful daisies and sunflowers, and wrapped the arrangement in bright paper. This was her world, flowers and ordinary people with ordinary problems, not guns and apologies written on expensive cardstock. She just needed to remember that. But that night, lying in bed in the room she'd occupied since her parents died, Emma couldn't stop thinking about the man who'd held a gun to her chest and then sent $1,000 to apologize for it. Couldn't stop wondering what kind of difficulties required answering doors armed and ready for violence. And the worst part, the part she didn't want to admit even to herself, was the small spark of curiosity burning in her chest. The desire to understand the world she'd glimpsed for those few terrifying minutes on stone steps in the Gold Coast. Emma told herself it was just shock, residual adrenaline making her thoughts run in circles. Tomorrow she'd wake up and everything would go back to normal. She almost believed it. 3 days passed. Emma fell into her routine, opening the shop, processing orders, making deliveries. The envelope with Dante's money stayed in her desk drawer unopened. She couldn't bring herself to deposit it, but she couldn't bring herself to return it either. On Thursday afternoon, she was arranging roses for a corporate event when her phone rang. Unknown number. Petal and stem, this is Emma. Miss Chen. The voice was familiar, though she'd only heard it briefly. Marco Rossi. I'm calling on behalf of Mr. Castellano. Emma's stomach tightened. I received the payment. Please thank him for me. He'll be glad to hear that. However, I'm calling about a different matter. Mr. Castellano would like to meet with you. Tomorrow evening, if you're available. Meet with me? Why? He'd prefer to discuss that in person. I assure you this is simply a conversation. You're not in any trouble, and you're under no obligation to accept. Emma's mind raced. Every instinct screamed that this was a bad idea. I don't think that's appropriate. I understand your hesitation, but Mr. Castellano believes you may have witnessed something during the delivery that could be important. He'd like to ask you a few questions, purely for security purposes. I didn't see anything, just flowers and a wrong address. Nevertheless, he'd appreciate the opportunity to speak with you. 1 hour of your time, at a location of your choosing. He's willing to compensate you for the inconvenience. I don't want more money. Then consider it a personal request from someone who would very much like to apologize in person for frightening you. The way Marco said it suggested refusal wasn't really an option. Not a threat, exactly, but a gentle pressure that made it clear this meeting would happen one way or another. Emma thought about her grandmother's advice, trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, you leave. Everything about this felt wrong. But underneath the wrongness was something else. Curiosity. The desire to understand why a man who could send associates and money and carefully worded notes would want to speak with her personally. Public place, she heard herself say. Somewhere with people around. Of course. Would Millennium Park work? Near the Bean. 5 p.m. tomorrow. Mr. Castellano will come alone, and you're welcome to bring anyone you'd like for safety. Emma closed her eyes. This was insane. She should hang up, block the number, forget any of this had happened. Fine, she said instead. 5 p.m. Millennium Park. Thank you, Miss Chen. Mr. Castellano will appreciate it. The call ended. Emma set down her phone and stared at the roses in front of her, their red petals perfect and unmarred. She just agreed to meet a man who'd held her at gunpoint. In public, yes. In daylight, yes. But still, meeting him, talking to him, stepping further into a world she didn't understand. That evening, she told her grandmother she had to meet with a potential new client tomorrow after work. The lie came more easily this time, smoothing out the edges of truth into something manageable. Papa looked at her over dinner, those sharp eyes seeing too much. This client, they're paying well. They want to discuss a large order. Corporate account. Possibly. And you trust them? Emma thought about guns and apologies and offers of assistance from dangerous men. I'm meeting them in a public park. I'll be careful. Her grandmother nodded slowly, but Emma could see the concern in the set of her shoulders, the way her hands moved a little too precisely as she served rice. That night, Emma lay awake wondering what questions Dante Castellano could possibly have for her. What she could have witnessed that mattered enough for a personal meeting. And underneath the anxiety was that spark of curiosity again, burning brighter now. The desire to see him again, to understand the man behind the gun and the formal apology. Tomorrow evening, she would meet him. And somehow, Emma knew that her carefully constructed, safely predictable life was about to change in ways she couldn't predict or control. She just didn't know yet whether that change would save her or destroy her. Emma arrived at Millennium Park 15 minutes early, positioning herself near the bean where she could see anyone approaching from multiple directions. February wind cut through her coat, making the famous sculpture's reflective surface ripple with distorted images of the city skyline. Tourists were sparse this time of year, but enough people wandered through the park that she didn't feel isolated. She told herself a dozen times today that she could still leave. Walk away, block Marco's number, return the money, and pretend none of this had happened. But her feet had carried her here anyway, drawn by curiosity and something else she didn't want to name. At exactly 5 p.m., she saw him. Dante Castellano walked across the park like he owned it, dressed in a charcoal overcoat that probably cost more than Emma's van. No visible security, no scarred associate trailing behind him, just a man alone keeping a promise to meet without backup. His dark hair caught the dying sunlight, and even from a distance, she recognized the controlled way he moved. Efficient, aware, dangerous. He stopped a few feet away, hands visible at his sides, giving her space. Miss Chen, thank you for coming. You said you had questions. Emma kept her voice steady, professional. She wouldn't let him see how fast her heart was beating. I do. But first, I owe you an apology that's more than words on paper. His dark eyes met hers directly. I frightened you. Threatened you when you were simply doing your job. That was inexcusable, regardless of my reasons. You thought I was someone else. Someone dangerous. That doesn't justify pointing a gun at an innocent woman. He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. I've spent the past few days trying to understand how to make this right. Money seemed insulting. Flowers seemed ironic. So I'm offering the truth instead if you want it. Emma wrapped her arms around herself against the cold. What truth? Walk with me. Dante gestured toward the path that wound through the park. This conversation is better had while moving. Every instinct screamed not to go anywhere with this man. But they were in public, in daylight, surrounded by witnesses. And the part of her that had knocked on his door despite the gun wanted answers, more than it wanted safety. They walked side by side, maintaining careful distance between them. 3 weeks ago, Dante began, someone sent a message to my home. A funeral arrangement for my mother, Margaret Castellano, who died 6 years ago. The card included details about her death that weren't public knowledge. It was a threat, Miss Chen. A way of saying they knew my family history and could reach me whenever they wanted. Emma's breath caught. The flowers I was delivering were legitimate condolences for a real funeral. Complete coincidence. But when you rang my doorbell with an arrangement for Margaret Castellano, I thought. He exhaled slowly. I thought the threat was being made good, that whoever sent that message 3 weeks ago was following through. Who sent the first arrangement? I don't know yet, which brings me to why I asked you here. Dante stopped walking, turning to face her. I need to know exactly what happened with that delivery order. Who took it? Who wrote down the address? Whether anyone asked specifically for you to make the delivery. My boss took the order. Michael Harper. He owns Petal and Stem. Emma pulled her coat tighter. He was hungover yesterday morning, left me to handle everything. His handwriting was terrible, which is why I went to the wrong address. There was nothing unusual about the order itself. And the family who placed it? The Hendersons. I delivered the replacement arrangement to them. They seemed genuinely grateful. Just an elderly woman grieving her mother-in-law. Dante nodded slowly, processing this information. Has anyone approached you since the delivery? Asked questions about where you went, who you met? No. Just Marco's call and now this. Emma studied his face, looking for deception and finding only careful assessment. You really think someone might come after me because I knocked on your door by mistake? I think someone is trying to destabilize my operations by creating fear and uncertainty. Sending funeral flowers was psychological warfare. If they know a florist stumbled into the middle of their game, even accidentally, they might see you as a loose end. The words sent ice through Emma's veins. A loose end? I'm not trying to scare you, Miss Chen. I'm trying to be honest about the reality of the situation you've found yourself in. His expression softened slightly. The $1,000 wasn't just an apology. It was the beginning of ensuring your safety. I have people watching your shop, your apartment, the routes you drive for deliveries. Making sure no one takes an unwanted interest in the florist who delivered to the wrong address. Emma took a step back, anger cutting through her fear. You have people watching me? Without my knowledge or permission. Would you have agreed if I'd asked? That's not the point. The point is keeping you alive. Dante's voice remained calm, but something hard edged into it. Someone out there is playing a dangerous game, and you walked into the middle of it. I won't apologize for taking precautions to protect an innocent civilian. I'm not your responsibility. You became my responsibility the moment you knocked on my door. He took a step closer, not threatening but intense. In my world, Miss Chen, there are rules. When someone stumbles into your business through no fault of their own, you protect them. It's not negotiable. Emma wanted to argue, to insist she could take care of herself. But the memory of that gun, the casual way he'd assessed her as a threat, reminded her how little she understood about the world he inhabited. What do you want from me? She asked quietly. Your awareness. If anyone approaches you asking questions about deliveries, about me, about anything unusual, you contact Marco immediately. Dante pulled a card from his pocket, different from the one in his note. This one had only a phone number, no name. This is a direct line. Not to Marco, to me. If you're in danger, if you feel threatened, you call that number and I will come. Personally. Emma took the card, the weight of it somehow significant in her palm. Why would you do that? You don't know me. Because you were delivering flowers to a funeral and ended up in my crosshairs through no fault of your own. Because in a world full of people who would exploit that situation, you simply apologized and tried to leave. Because, he stopped himself, jaw tightening. Because it's the right thing to do. They stood in silence for a moment, the city humming around them. Emma studied this man who terrified her and was now offering protection she hadn't asked for. There was something in his eyes, beneath the controlled exterior, old grief, maybe, or the weight of too many responsibilities. The difficulties you mentioned in your note, Emma said. The reason you answer the door with a gun. Is it going to get worse? Honestly, I don't know. Whoever is behind this is smart, patient, strategic. They're not rushing, which means when they do make their real move, it will be devastating. And you think I might be part of that move? I think you're a variable they didn't plan for, which makes you either irrelevant or extremely relevant. Until I know which, I'm treating you as relevant. Emma looked down at the card in her hand, the simple phone number that represented a direct line to a man who lived in violence and power. She should throw it away, tell him to call off his watchers, go back to her safe, predictable life of flowers and rent payments. Okay, she heard herself say instead. I'll be aware. I'll call if anything unusual happens. Something flickered across Dante's face, surprise, maybe a relief. Thank you. But I have conditions. His eyebrow raised slightly. Conditions. Your people watching me, they need to be less obvious. I noticed a black sedan that's been parked across from my shop for 3 days. The same man walking past my apartment building every evening at 9. If I noticed, other people will too. A hint of what might have been respect touched his expression. I'll speak to my security team about being more discreet. And the money, I'm keeping it, because I need it. But we're clear that it's payment for damaged flowers and my time today, nothing else. I'm not on your payroll. I'm not obligated to you beyond basic awareness of my own safety. Understood. And if this situation resolves, if whoever is threatening you gets caught or gives up, or whatever happens in your world, you leave me alone. We go back to being strangers who happen to meet by accident. Dante was quiet for a long moment, his dark eyes searching her face. If that's what you want when this is over, yes. You have my word. Emma nodded, tucking the card into her pocket. Then I should get home. My grandmother will worry if I'm late for dinner. Your grandmother? Papa, you call her? Emma's eyes narrowed. How do you know that? I had Marco research you. Basic background, nothing invasive. I needed to know who I was dealing with. He raised a hand before she could protest. I know how that sounds. But in my position, trust has to be earned, even when dealing with florists who deliver to wrong addresses. What else did your research tell you? That you've worked at Petal and STEM for 7 years. That you live with your grandmother in Chinatown. That your parents died when you were 16, and she raised you. That you take night classes at community college when you can afford them, studying linguistics. He paused. That you work harder than your boss, earn less than you deserve, and have never been in any kind of trouble. The accuracy of it made Emma uncomfortable. He cataloged her entire life in a few sentences, reducing her to data points and background checks. I'm not just information in a file, she said quietly. No. Dante's voice softened. You're a woman who knocked on the wrong door and handled herself with remarkable composure when faced with a gun. Who negotiates terms, even when she's clearly afraid. Who cares enough about her grandmother to lie about where she's going to avoid worrying her. His eyes held hers. You're someone worth protecting, Miss Chen. That's what my research told me. Emma's throat tightened unexpectedly. When was the last time someone had said she was worth something beyond her ability to arrange flowers or process orders? I should go, she managed. I'll have someone walk you to your car. Discreetly, he added when she started to protest. Just to make sure you get home safely. They walked back through the park in silence. The sun was setting now, painting Chicago's skyline in shades of orange and pink. At the edge of the park, Emma's battered van waited in a parking lot next to Dante's sleek black car. Miss Chen, Dante said as they reached the vehicles. Emma, if I may? She nodded, surprised by the informality. Thank you for giving me the chance to explain, and for trusting me enough to take precautions. He extended his hand. I hope the next time we meet, it's under better circumstances. Emma shook his hand, feeling the strength in his grip, the calluses that suggested he was more than just a man in expensive suits. I hope there isn't a next time, Mr. Castellano. No offense. A hint of a smile touched his lips. None taken. Drive safely. The roads are still icy. The same words he'd said after holding a gun on her. But this time they sounded different. Genuine concern rather than dismissal. Emma drove home through evening traffic, her mind churning. She'd just agreed to be protected by a man who answered doors with guns drawn. Had accepted his money, his security, his direct phone number. Had stepped further into a world she didn't understand. But underneath the anxiety was something else. A strange sense that maybe, for the first time in years, someone was actually looking out for her. Not because she was useful or obligated, but because it was, as he'd said, the right thing to do. She pulled into the alley behind Petal and Stem and climbed the stairs to the apartment, where her grandmother was setting the table for dinner. How did the meeting go? Papa asked in Cantonese. Fine. They want to place regular orders. Corporate account. The lie came easily now, smoothing over the complicated truth. But that night, lying in bed, Emma pulled out the card Dante had given her. Just a phone number, simple black text on white cardstock. A direct line to a dangerous man who'd promised to come if she called. She tucked it into her nightstand drawer, next to the photo of her parents, and the jade bracelet her grandmother had given her on her 16th birthday. Important things. Things that mattered. Emma told herself she'd never use it, that this situation would resolve itself, and she'd throw the card away and forget any of this had happened. But she didn't throw it away. Not that night, and not in the days that followed. Because deep down, Beneath all the fear and uncertainty and rational objections, Emma was beginning to understand something that both terrified and intrigued her. Dante Castellano had seen her, really seen her, in a way most people never did. And now she'd been pulled into his orbit, connected to him by invisible threads of protection and obligation and something else she didn't have a name for yet. Her life was changing, had already changed, the moment that door opened and revealed dark eyes and controlled violence, and a man who apologized for threatening her and then offered protection she hadn't asked for. Emma just didn't know yet whether that change would save her or destroy her. But she was beginning to suspect it might be both. A week passed. Emma returned to her routine, but everything felt different now. She noticed things she'd ignored before, the same cars parked in different locations around her neighborhood, the way certain people seemed to show up wherever she went, always at a distance but always present. Dante's protection, she realized. Subtle now, as she'd requested, but definitely there. It should have felt invasive. Instead, it felt strangely comforting. On Tuesday afternoon, Emma was delivering an arrangement to a restaurant in River North when she noticed him. A man in his 30s, unremarkable features, watching her from across the street. Not Dante's people. She'd learned to recognize them by now. This was someone new, someone whose attention felt different. Predatory. Their eyes met for just a second before he turned and walked away, disappearing into the lunch crowd. Emma's hand found her phone automatically, pulling up the contacts. The card was at home in her nightstand, but she'd memorized the number days ago. She stood on the sidewalk, thumb hovering over the call button, debating. It was probably nothing. Just a man on the street, nothing sinister. But Dante's words echoed in her mind. If you feel threatened, you call that number and I will come. Emma pressed call. He answered on the second ring. Emma, what's wrong? Not Miss Chen anymore. Just Emma. And his voice carried immediate concern, sharp attention. I'm probably overreacting, she started. Tell me anyway. So she did. Described the man, the location, the way he'd been watching her. Dante listened without interrupting. Stay where you are, he said when she finished. Don't go back to your van alone. I'm sending people now. They'll be there in 3 minutes. Dante, it's probably nothing. Probably isn't the same as certainly. 3 minutes, Emma. Stay visible. Stay around people. The call ended. Emma stood in front of the restaurant, heart pounding, feeling foolish and frightened in equal measure. She was overreacting, making something out of nothing because Dante had put the possibility of danger in her mind. 2 minutes and 40 seconds later, a black car pulled up to the curb. The scarred man from Dante's doorway, the one he'd called his associate, emerged from the driver's side. Miss Chen, I'm Vincent. Mr. Castellano asked me to escort you home. That's really not necessary. I'm sure it was just. Mr. Castellano was very clear. I'm to make sure you get home safely, check your apartment and your shop, and stay until he arrives. Emma's eyes widened. He's coming here. He's on his way now. Vincent's expression was professionally neutral. Your van is the white one in the lot behind the restaurant. Yes, but I'll have someone drive it back to your shop. You'll ride with me. Please, Miss Chen. Don't make this more difficult than it needs to be. There was no real choice. Emma got into the passenger seat, her mind spinning. This was too much. She called because of a feeling, nothing concrete, and now Dante was mobilizing people and coming personally and treating her like she was genuinely in danger. The drive to Chinatown took 15 minutes. Vincent remained silent, his eyes constantly checking mirrors, scanning cross streets. Professional. Thorough. The kind of protection that came from years of keeping dangerous people alive. He parked behind pedal and stem, where Emma's van was already waiting, driven by another of Dante's people. Vincent checked the shop first, then her apartment, moving through rooms with efficient precision. All clear, he announced. Mr. Castellano should be here within 10 minutes. Emma sat on her couch, feeling surreal. Her grandmother was at her weekly mahjong game. Thank God. How would Emma explain armed men checking their apartment? When the knock came, Vincent answered it. Dante entered, still in the suit he'd probably worn to whatever meeting he'd left to come here. His eyes found Emma immediately, scanning her face, her posture, looking for signs of harm. Tell me again what you saw, he said without preamble. So Emma described it once more. The man across the street, the way he'd watched her, the feeling that had made her call. Dante listened, his expression growing darker. When she finished, he pulled out his phone and showed her a photo. Is this him? Emma's breath caught. It was the same man. Exactly the same. Yes. Who is he? His name is Marcus Webb. He works for the Drago family. Dante's jaw tightened. They're the ones I've been having difficulties with. The ones who sent the funeral flowers 3 weeks ago. The room suddenly felt colder. He was watching me because of you. Because you delivered to my address. Because you're a connection to me, however accidental. Dante sat on the couch across from her, elbows on his knees, his intensity focused entirely on her. Emma, I need you to listen very carefully. The Dragos are not subtle people. If Webb was watching you, it means they're considering you as leverage. A way to get to me. But I'm nobody. I don't know anything about your business. You knocked on my door. You spoke to me. In their minds, that makes you connected. His hands flexed, the only visible sign of the anger he was controlling. I'm sorry. This is exactly what I was trying to prevent. Emma wrapped her arms around herself. What happens now? Now we make sure they understand that touching you would be the worst mistake of their lives. Dante pulled out his phone again, typing rapidly. I'm having your apartment and shop security upgraded. Real systems, not just people watching from cars. Vincent will coordinate. Wait. Emma held up a hand. You can't just take over my life like this. I'm not taking over. I'm protecting. By installing security systems I didn't ask for. By having armed men in my home. By keeping you alive. The words came out sharper than he probably intended. Dante took a breath, visibly steadying himself. I'm sorry, but yes, I'm installing security. I'm assigning protection. I'm doing whatever is necessary to make sure the Dragos know that you are off limits. And what about my grandmother? She lives here too. How do I explain cameras and security systems and men watching our building? Dante paused, something crossing his face. Concern, maybe, or a recognition that he'd been thinking tactically instead of personally. What does she know about what happened? Nothing. I told her the delivery was a wrong address, nothing more. Emma stood, pacing to the window. She's 72 years old, Mr. Castellano. She survived poverty and revolution and immigration. She raised me after my parents died. She doesn't need to spend her final years afraid because I delivered flowers to the wrong address. Then we tell her the security is because of increased crime in the neighborhood. Break-ins, thefts, nothing specific to you. His voice softened. I understand wanting to protect her, Emma. I have a sister I keep far away from my world for the same reason. But your grandmother's safety is part of your safety. The Dragos wouldn't hesitate to use her as leverage if they thought it would work. The thought made Emma's stomach turn. She sank back onto the couch, the weight of the situation finally crushing down on her. I just wanted to deliver flowers. That's all. I didn't ask for any of this. I know. Dante moved to sit beside her, not touching, but close enough that she could feel the solid presence of him. And I'm going to fix it. The Dragos will back off. This situation will resolve. I promise you that. How can you promise that? Because I've been dealing with families like the Dragos my entire life. Because I have resources they don't. Because, he stopped, seeming to debate something internally. Because I don't let innocent people suffer for my conflicts. It's a line I don't cross. Emma looked at him, really looked at him. Beneath the expensive suit and controlled demeanor was someone carrying the weight of responsibilities she couldn't imagine. Someone who'd built walls around vulnerability, but was showing her glimpses of what lay beneath. Why do you care so much? She asked quietly. Really? You could have just paid me off, told me to be careful, and washed your hands of the situation. Why go this far? Dante was silent for a long moment, his dark eyes holding hers. My mother, he finally said. Margaret Castellano. The woman whose name was on those flowers. You said she died 6 years ago. She did. Breast cancer, long battle. His voice carried old grief. But before that, when I was 16, she was caught in crossfire during a dispute between my father's organization and a rival family. She wasn't the target, just a civilian in the wrong place at the wrong time. She survived, but she carried a bullet in her spine for the rest of her life. lived with chronic pain that eventually wore her down enough that the cancer could take hold. Emma's throat tightened. I'm sorry. My father always said it was unavoidable. Collateral damage. The cost of doing business. Dante's jaw tightened. I swore then that I would never accept collateral damage. That if innocent people got caught in my world, I would move heaven and earth to protect them. Because my mother deserved better. And so do you. The raw honesty of it settled between them, heavy and significant. Emma reached out before she could think better of it, her hand covering his. Thank you, she said, for telling me that, for caring about collateral damage. Dante looked down at their joined hands, something vulnerable flickering across his face. You're not collateral damage, Emma. He stopped himself, pulling back slightly. You're someone I won't let get hurt because of my world. The air between them felt charged suddenly, awareness crackling in the space that separated them. Emma realized how close they were sitting, how his presence seemed to fill the room, how her heart was beating faster for reasons that had nothing to do with fear. She pulled her hand back, creating necessary distance. I should check on the shop, make sure everything is locked up before my grandmother gets home. I'll come with you. Dante stood, offering his hand to help her up. Vincent will stay here and begin the security installation. If your grandmother returns, he'll explain it as a neighborhood safety measure. They walked downstairs to the shop, the familiar space feeling different now. Emma moved through the routine of closing up, securing the cash register, checking the cooler temperatures, sweeping fallen petals from the floor. Dante watched from near the door, hands in his pockets, looking oddly out of place among the flowers and ribbon. You're good at this, he observed. At what? Creating beauty, taking cut flowers that will die in a week and arranging them into something that matters to people. Funerals, weddings, apologies, celebrations. You make them mean something. Emma paused in her sweeping. It's just a job. No, it's a skill, a talent. He moved closer, examining an arrangement she created that afternoon. Burgundy roses and white calla lilies for someone's anniversary. You understand that flowers are a language, that the way you combine them tells a story. My mother taught me that. Before she died, Emma set down the broom. She worked in a flower shop in Hong Kong before immigrating. She said flowers were how people said the things they couldn't speak out loud. What would these say? Dante gestured to the anniversary arrangement. Emma studied her own work. Passion that's deepened into something richer. Love that survived time. Celebration of what endures. And what flowers would say, I'm sorry I pointed a gun at you and turned your life upside down. Despite everything, Emma smiled. White tulips for forgiveness. Blue hyacinth for sincere regret. Maybe some lavender for acknowledgement of fault. I'll remember that. Dante's expression softened. Though I think actions speak louder than flowers in this case. Most of the time, yes. But sometimes people need both. They stood in the quiet shop, surrounded by the sweet scent of roses and the earthy smell of eucalyptus. Outside, Chicago moved through its evening rhythms. Traffic, voices, the endless pulse of a city. But inside the small space, time seemed suspended. I should let you finish closing up, Dante said, though he made no move to leave. Emma, he paused, seeming to struggle with something. If this becomes too much, if you want to take your grandmother and leave the city until this is resolved, I can arrange that. New identities, safe location, enough money to start over somewhere the Dragos will never find you. Emma thought about running, about leaving behind the flower shop and the apartment and the life she built from grief and determination. About starting over somewhere new, someone new. No, she said firmly. This is my home. My grandmother's home. I'm not running from bullies who send funeral flowers and watch people from across the street. Something like pride flickered across Dante's face. You're braver than you think. I'm terrified, but terror and bravery aren't mutually exclusive. My grandmother taught me that. She sounds like a remarkable woman. She is. You'd like her, probably. She has very strong opinions about everything and isn't afraid to share them. Dante smiled, genuine warmth breaking through his controlled exterior. I definitely like her already. Emma finished closing the shop, very aware of Dante's presence in the small space, the way he moved when she needed to pass him, the careful distance he maintained. Respectful. protective, interested in a way that went beyond obligation. When she locked the door and they climbed the stairs back to her apartment, Emma was struck by how surreal this entire situation had become. A week ago, she'd been a struggling florist worried about rent and her boss's drinking. Now she was under the protection of a man who lived in violence and power, who'd shared grief about his mother and promised to keep her safe from families that sent threats through flower arrangements. Her grandmother still wasn't home. Vincent had made progress on the security system, cameras being installed in subtle locations. "I'll leave you to your evening," Dante said at the door. "Vincent will finish the installation and brief you on how everything works. I'll have people watching the building tonight, rotating shifts. You won't see them, but they'll be there." "Dante." Emma stopped him before he could leave. "Thank you for coming when I called, for taking this seriously even though it might be nothing." "It's not nothing. Web watching you is a message. They know you're connected to me, and they're considering how to exploit that." His eyes held hers. "But they're going to learn very quickly that exploiting you is the fastest way to make an enemy they can't afford. You're going after them. I'm making it clear that you are protected. By me personally. That's a language the Dragos understand." Emma wanted to ask what that meant specifically, what actions he would take. But part of her didn't want to know. Didn't want to see too clearly into the world of violence and retribution that existed just beneath the surface of his controlled exterior. "Be safe," she said instead. "Always." He paused at the door, looking back at her. "Emma, the number I gave you, use it. For anything. Not just threats or danger. If you need to talk, if you're scared, if you just want reassurance that everything is going to be okay, call me. That's above and beyond protection." "Yes," he agreed quietly. "It is." He left before she could respond, his footsteps echoing down the stairs. Emma stood in her doorway, watching the empty space where he'd been, feeling the shift that had happened between them. This wasn't just about protection anymore. It was becoming something else, something neither of them had named but both recognized. Vincent approached. "Miss Chen, I'm almost done with the cameras. Let me show you how to access the feeds from your phone." Emma followed him, learning about security systems she'd never needed before, accepting protection she'd never asked for, living a life that had transformed completely in the span of a single wrong delivery. That night, she lay in bed with her phone on the nightstand, Dante's number saved in her contacts. She didn't call, didn't need to, but knowing she could, knowing he'd answer, knowing he'd come, made the darkness feel less threatening. And that terrified her almost as much as the man who'd watched her from across the street. Because Emma was beginning to realize that the real danger wasn't the Dragos or their threats. It was how safe she felt with a man who lived in violence, how much she was starting to trust someone she barely knew, how her heart beat faster when he looked at her like she mattered beyond obligation. She was falling into something she didn't understand with someone she definitely shouldn't want. And she had no idea how to stop it, or if she even wanted to. The security cameras became part of Emma's routine within days. She checked them each morning on her phone, watching grainy footage of her street, the shop entrance, the alley where she parked her van. Vincent had done thorough work, every angle covered, every approach monitored. She should have felt invaded. Instead, she felt protected. 2 weeks passed without incident. Emma delivered flowers across Chicago, always aware of Dante's people maintaining discreet distance. She learned to recognize them, the rotating vehicles, the faces that appeared in different locations, the subtle coordination that suggested military precision. Her grandmother noticed the cameras, accepted Vincent's explanation about neighborhood crime with surprising ease. "Good," Papa had said in Cantonese. "Too many break-ins lately. Smart to be careful." Emma didn't mention the real reason. Didn't explain that a rival crime family might see her as leverage against a man she barely knew but couldn't stop thinking about. Dante called every few days, brief check-ins that felt like more than professional obligation. He'd ask about her day, her grandmother's health, whether she felt safe. The conversations never lasted long, but Emma found herself looking forward to his voice on the line, the careful concern beneath his controlled tone. On a Thursday afternoon, Emma was creating centerpieces for a wedding when her phone buzzed. Not Dante's number, Marco Rossi's. "Miss Chen, I'm calling on behalf of Mr. Castellano. He'd like to invite you to dinner tomorrow evening." Emma's hands stilled on the roses she'd been arranging. "Dinner? Nothing formal. Just a meal and conversation. He wanted me to emphasize that you're under no obligation to accept, but he would appreciate your company. Is this about the Dragos? Has something happened? No new threats. This is purely personal, Miss Chen. Mr. Castellano would simply like to see you in a context that doesn't involve danger or security briefings. Personal. The word settled in Emma's chest with uncomfortable warmth. I don't think that's appropriate, she said carefully. Given the circumstances. Mr. Castellano anticipated that response. He asked me to tell you that the circumstances are precisely why he'd like to see you. Because you've handled an impossible situation with remarkable grace, and he'd like to know you as more than just someone he's protecting. Emma closed her eyes. This was a terrible idea. Getting personally involved with a man who lived in violence, who had enemies that sent funeral flowers as threats, who'd held a gun to her chest the first time they met. Where? She heard herself ask. His home. The townhouse where you originally delivered. He'll cook personally. 7 p.m. tomorrow. A car will pick you up if you'd like, or you can drive yourself. I'll drive myself. Excellent. I'll let Mr. Castellano know to expect you. After the call ended, Emma sat staring at her phone. She was actually going to have dinner with Dante Castellano. Alone in his home, in what Marco had explicitly called a personal context. This was insane. That evening, she told her grandmother she had plans Friday night. Dinner with a friend from her old community college classes. The lie came easier than it should have. Papa looked at her over the dinner table with those sharp eyes that missed nothing. A friend? What kind of friend? Just someone I knew from school. We're catching up. You're wearing lipstick to catch up with a school friend? Emma touched her lips self-consciously. She hadn't even realized she'd put it on. It's just dinner, Papa. Her grandmother returned to her rice, but Emma could feel the assessment continuing. This friend. They treat you well? Yes. Very well. Then have a good time. But be home by 11. And text me when you arrive, so I know you're safe. Emma agreed, relief and guilt mixing in her chest. Her grandmother trusted her, believed the lie, expected nothing more complicated than dinner with an old classmate. If she knew the truth, that Emma was having dinner with a man who'd pointed a gun at her, who ran operations that existed in Chicago's shadows, who'd assigned armed guards to watch their building, Papa would lock her in her room. Friday evening arrived too quickly. Emma changed clothes 3 times, finally settling on dark jeans and a burgundy sweater that her mother had given her years ago. Professional but not formal. Attractive but not trying too hard. She was definitely trying too hard. The drive to the Gold Coast felt surreal. Emma parked on the street in front of 2847 North Astor, the address that had changed everything. The townhouse looked different at night, warm light glowing from windows, the harsh edges softened by darkness, and carefully positioned landscape lighting. Emma sat in her van for a full minute, debating whether to actually go through with this. She could drive away, call Marco with an excuse, return to her safe, predictable life. But her feet carried her up those stone steps anyway. The same steps where she dropped funeral flowers 2 weeks ago. Where Dante had stood with a gun and cold assessment and promises to drive carefully on icy streets. She rang the doorbell. The door opened. Dante stood there in jeans and a dark sweater, casual in a way that made him look younger, more approachable. His hair was slightly disheveled, like he'd been running his hands through it while cooking. Emma, come in. He stepped back, creating space. Thank you for coming. The foyer was exactly as she glimpsed it before. Marble floors, expensive art, the kind of understated wealth that whispered rather than shouted. But now she could actually appreciate it, look around without fear making everything blur. Your home is beautiful, she said. Thank you. I inherited it from my parents. My mother loved this house. He gestured toward the back of the townhouse. I'm cooking in the kitchen. I hope you don't mind if we eat informally rather than in the dining room. I prefer informal. Emma followed him through rooms that spoke of old money and careful taste. The kitchen surprised her, large, modern, clearly used rather than just for show. Pots simmered on the stove, filling the air with the scent of garlic and herbs. I'm making osso buco, Dante explained, checking one of the pots. My mother's recipe. It's one of the few dishes I can cook well. You cook? When I have time, which isn't often. He poured wine into 2 glasses, offering her one. My mother insisted I learn. She said a man who could only destroy things was incomplete. He needed to know how to create and nurture as well. Emma accepted the wine, touched by the glimpse into his relationship with his mother. She sounds like she was wise. She was. Strong, too. Had to be, being married to my father. Dante returned to stirring one of the pots. He built an empire through violence and intimidation. She built a family through love and patience. I spent my whole life trying to figure out which one I wanted to be. And which did you choose? Both. Neither. Something in between. He glanced at her. I run my father's organization, handle the business he built. But I try to do it with the principles my mother taught me. Protection over aggression. Strategy over violence when possible. Never forgetting that the people caught in our world are human beings, not just collateral. Like his mother had been. Like Emma was now. They worked together as dinner finished cooking. Emma setting the small table in the kitchen while Dante plated the food. The domesticity of it felt surreal. This dangerous man who'd held her at gunpoint now serving her braised veal and risotto in his mother's kitchen. The food was excellent. Rich, tender, perfectly seasoned. Emma said so. My mother would be pleased. She always said food made with care could build bridges that words couldn't. Dante refilled her wine glass. Tell me about your parents. You said your mother worked in a flower shop in Hong Kong? So Emma told him. About her mother who'd loved flowers and language, who'd met her father, an American teacher working abroad, and fallen in love despite their family's objections. About immigrating to Chicago, building a life, opening their own small shop. About the car accident that had taken them both when Emma was 16, leaving her with Papuan grief and a determination to keep their dream alive. That's why you work at Petal and Stem, Dante said quietly. It's not just a job, it's maintaining their legacy. The shop they worked at closed years ago. But I learned everything there from them. When I arrange flowers, I'm using techniques my mother taught me. When I talk to customers, I'm using the patience my father modeled. Emma traced the rim of her wine glass. It's the only way I have left to keep them alive. I understand that. The business I run. It's my father's empire, but I'm trying to transform it into something my mother would have approved of. Legitimate operations where possible, protection for those who need it, lines I won't cross even when it costs me. They talked for hours, about families and loss, and the weight of living up to legacies left by the dead. About Chicago and its neighborhoods, the city they both loved for different reasons. About books and music, and the small things that made life bearable when larger things felt overwhelming. Emma found herself relaxing, laughing at Dante's dry observations about Chicago politics and his sister's attempts to set him up with appropriate women. He was funny when he let his guard down, sharp and observant with a cynicism tempered by unexpected kindness. Your sister sounds wonderful, Emma said after another story about Lauren's determination to normalize his life. She is. Too good for my world, which is why I keep her far away from it. Dante's expression grew serious. She teaches middle school in Boston, has a normal life with normal problems. No idea that her brother runs an organization built on violence and territory control. Does she know you at all, then? If you hide that much of yourself, she knows the parts one want her to know. The brother who calls every week, who visits when he can, who still remembers her birthday and sends flowers. He paused. The flowers always come from Petal and Stem, by the way. Have for years. Emma's eyes widened. You've been ordering from us for years? Your shop does good work. And after my mother died, I wanted flowers that felt personal, not corporate. The arrangements from Petal and Stem always had something. Care, maybe. Attention to what the flowers were saying, not just how they looked. That was probably my work. I handle most of the personal orders. Then I've been inadvertently supporting your artistry for 6 years. A smile touched his lips. Fate has a strange sense of humor. They moved to the living room after dinner, Emma carrying her wine glass, still trying to reconcile the man serving her food and talking about his sister with the man who'd held a gun to her chest. You're trying to figure me out, Dante observed, settling into a leather chair across from the couch where Emma sat. I can see it in your face. Wondering which version is real, the man with the gun or the man making osso buco. Both are real, I think. That's what confuses me. Most people are contradictions. I'm just more extreme than most. He set down his wine glass. Emma, I need to tell you something. About the Dragos and the situation you've been pulled into. The shift in his tone made Emma's stomach tighten. What happened? Nothing bad. Actually, something good. I've reached an understanding with their leadership. They've agreed to leave you alone in exchange for certain territorial concessions on my part. Relief flooded through her. So it's over. I'm safe. You're safe from them specifically, yes. The protection will remain in place for a few more weeks to make sure they honor the agreement, but the immediate threat has passed. Emma should have felt pure relief. Instead, disappointment twisted through her chest. So you don't need to protect me anymore. No, I don't need to. Dante leaned forward, his dark eyes intense on hers. Which means what happens next is entirely your choice, not influenced by obligation or safety concerns. What happens next? That depends on whether you want there to be a next. Whether tonight was just dinner with someone who owed you an apology or the beginning of something more. Emma's heart hammered. This was the moment, the choice he was giving her. Walk away now, return to her normal life, forget about dangerous men and protection details, and the way her pulse quickened when he looked at her. Or step forward into something she didn't fully understand with someone she definitely shouldn't want. I don't know how to do this, she admitted. You're not exactly the kind of person I imagined getting involved with. What kind of person did you imagine? Someone normal, safe, someone who works a regular job and has regular problems and doesn't answer doors with guns. I'm not that person. I never will be. Dante's honesty was painful and refreshing. My world is dangerous, Emma. The threats will never fully disappear. There will always be someone looking for leverage, someone testing boundaries. Getting involved with me means accepting that reality. And if I can't accept it, then we end this now. You go home. I remove the protection detail, and we become what we would have been if you delivered to the correct address. Strangers who never met. Emma studied him. This man who cooked his mother's recipes and protected innocent people and carried the weight of an empire built on violence. Who'd given her a choice rather than making decisions for her. Who looked at her like she was worth the complications she brought into his carefully controlled world. If you're hooked on this story, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Your support means everything and helps me bring you more emotional stories like this one. I don't want to be strangers, Emma heard herself say. Something shifted in Dante's expression. Hope, maybe carefully contained. What do you want? I want to understand this. Whatever this is between us. I want to know if what I feel is real or just adrenaline and proximity and Stockholm Syndrome from being protected. And how do we figure that out? Emma stood, crossed to where he sat, driven by impulse and wine and the need to know. She stopped in front of his chair, close enough that she could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes, the faint scar above his left eyebrow, the tension in his jaw as he watched her. We start with honesty, she said. I'm attracted to you. Terrified of you sometimes, fascinated by you always. I think about you when I shouldn't. I look forward to your calls. I came here tonight knowing it was a terrible idea, but unable to stay away. Dante stood slowly, his height making her tilt her head back to maintain eye contact. Emma, your turn, she interrupted. Honest. He was quiet for a long moment, something vulnerable breaking through his controlled exterior. I haven't been able to stop thinking about you since you dropped those flowers on my doorstep. The way you handled fear with such composure. The way you negotiate for yourself even when you're clearly terrified. The way you talk about your parents and your grandmother and flowers like they're the most important things in the world. His hand came up to cup her face, thumb brushing her cheekbone. You walked into my life by accident and somehow became the most real thing in it. Emma's breath caught. The air between them felt charged, heavy with everything unspoken. This is a terrible idea, she whispered. The worst I've ever had. His other hand found her waist, pulling her infinitesimally closer. Your world is dangerous. Extremely. I'm completely out of my depth. Completely. We barely know each other. Then let's change that. Dante's forehead touched hers, his breath warm against her skin. Emma, I'm going to kiss you now. If you don't want that, tell me to stop. She didn't tell him to stop. The kiss was soft at first, tentative, as if they were both afraid of shattering the moment. His lips were warm, gentle, nothing like the controlled violence she'd seen in him that first day. Emma responded instinctively, her hands finding his shoulders, feeling solid muscle beneath soft cashmere. The kiss deepened. Months of tension, finally finding release. His hand slid into her hair while the other tightened on her waist, pulling her fully against him. Emma felt the world narrow to this. His mouth on hers, his body solid and warm, the careful way he held her like she was something precious that might break. When they finally broke apart, both breathing harder, Emma kept her eyes closed for a moment, trying to memorize the feeling. Safe and desired and seen in ways she'd never experienced. "Stay," Dante whispered against her temple. "Not for anything physical. Just stay. Talk to me more. Let me know you better." Emma pulled back enough to look at his face. Vulnerability etched in every line, the carefully controlled man showing her something raw and honest. "I have to be home by 11. My grandmother will worry. Then we have 2 hours." They spent those 2 hours on the couch, wrapped in each other, talking about everything and nothing. Emma told him about her dreams of finishing college, maybe becoming a translator or interpreter. Dante told her about the legitimate businesses he was trying to build, the empire he wanted to transform into something his mother would have been proud of. At 10:30, Emma reluctantly pulled away. "I really do have to go." "I know." Dante stood, helping her up. "Can I see you again? Not for protection or security. Just because I want to." "Yes." The answer came without hesitation. He walked her to her van, his hand warm on the small of her back. At the driver's side door, he kissed her again, slower this time, savoring. "Drive carefully," he said. The same words from that first day, but now they sounded completely different. Affection rather than dismissal. "I will." Emma climbed into her van, her lips still tingling, her heart racing. As she drove home through Chicago streets, Emma tried to process what had just happened. She'd kissed Dante Castellano, had agreed to see him again, had stepped across a threshold she couldn't uncross. Her phone buzzed at a red light. A text from Dante, "Thank you for taking a chance on me." Emma smiled, typing back, "Thank you for cooking for me. And for everything else." His response came immediately, "Everything else is just beginning." She arrived home at 10:55. Her grandmother was in her chair, knitting, tea growing cold beside her. "Good time with your friend?" Papa asked in Cantonese, not looking up from her needles. "Yes." "Very good." Emma hung up her coat, aware that her cheeks were flushed, her lips slightly swollen from kissing. "This friend, you'll see them again?" "I think so." "Good." Her grandmother finally looked at her, those sharp eyes seeing far too much. "You look happy, Babé. I haven't seen you look this happy in a long time." Emma's throat tightened at the endearment. Precious treasure, the name her grandmother had called her since childhood. "I'm happy. Scared, but happy." Fear and happiness often walk together. The important thing is which one you let lead. Papa set down her knitting. "This person who makes you happy, they're good to you?" "Very good to me." "Then that's all a grandmother needs to know. For now." The unspoken suggestion that more questions would come later hung in the air. That night, Emma lay in bed with her phone beside her, Dante's number no longer just an emergency contact but something more. She didn't call, but knowing she could, knowing he'd answer, knowing they'd crossed from protection into something personal, made the darkness feel different. Not threatening, but full of possibility. Emma was falling for a man who lived in violence, who'd held a gun to her chest, who existed in a world she didn't understand. It was dangerous and complicated, and probably the worst decision she'd ever made. But as she drifted toward sleep, all Emma could think about was the way he'd looked at her like she was worth every complication. The way his kiss had felt like coming home and stepping into the unknown simultaneously. She delivered flowers to the wrong address and found something she hadn't been looking for. Now she just had to figure out how to keep it without losing herself in the process. 3 months changed everything. Emma stood in front of the mirror in Dante's bedroom, their bedroom now, though her grandmother didn't know about the nights she spent here. The dress she wore was simple but elegant, deep green silk that Dante had insisted on buying her for tonight's event. "You look beautiful," he said from the doorway, already dressed in his tuxedo. I looked terrified. Emma turned to face him. Your entire organization is going to be at this gala. Important people. Dangerous people. People who need to see that you're with me. Officially, publicly with me. Dante crossed the room, his hands settling at her waist. Emma, if this is too much. It's not too much. I'm just. She exhaled slowly. I'm a florist from Chinatown who delivered to the wrong address. And now I'm dating the head of one of Chicago's oldest crime families. It's surreal. You're not just a florist. You're brilliant, brave, and the only person who's ever made me want something beyond power and territory. He kissed her forehead. And they're going to love you because I do. The words stopped Emma's breath. They danced around saying it for weeks, but this was the first time either of them had been so direct. You love me, she whispered. Completely. Probably since you negotiated terms with me in Millennium Park like you were brokering a business deal. His smile was soft, genuine. I know it's fast. I know this whole situation is insane. But yes, Emma Chen, I love you. Emma reached up to cup his face, this dangerous man who'd become her safety. I love you too. God help me, but I do. The kiss was interrupted by Emma's phone buzzing. A text from her grandmother. When are you telling me about the boyfriend who sends you flowers every week and makes you smile at your phone like a teenager? Emma showed Dante the message, laughing. She knows. Of course she knows. Then maybe it's time I met her properly. Not as the man providing security for your building, but as the man who wants to be part of your life. She'll interrogate you mercilessly. I'd expect nothing less. The gala was everything Emma had feared and more. Held at a historic Chicago venue, filled with people in expensive clothes making deals that would never appear in any legitimate ledger. Dante kept her close, his hand possessive on her back, introducing her to people whose names she recognized from news reports about organized crime. But he also introduced her as his equal. Not his possession, not arm candy, his partner. The woman he was building something real with. Emma met his sister Lauren, who flew in from Boston specifically for this event. They bonded immediately over stories about Dante's terrible cooking attempts and his overprotective streak. He's different with you, Lauren said quietly while Dante was talking business across the room. Lighter. Like he remembers he's human and not just the organization. He's different with you too, Emma replied. The way he talks about you, there's so much love there. We protect each other. Him by keeping me out of his world, me by reminding him there's more to life than territory and power. Lauren squeezed Emma's hand. I'm glad he has you now. Someone who sees both sides of him and loves him anyway. Later, as they danced, Emma felt the weight of eyes watching them, assessing this new development, cataloging the florist who'd somehow captured Dante Castellano's attention. They're staring, she murmured against his shoulder. Let them. I want everyone to know you're mine. That touching you means war. His arms tightened around her. Emma, I need to ask you something. What? Move in with me. Officially. Not just nights here and there, but really move in. Bring your grandmother if she's willing. The townhouse is huge, and I can make sure she has everything she needs. Her own space, medical care, whatever makes her comfortable. Emma pulled back to look at him. Dante, that's too much, I know. Too fast. But I don't want to waste time pretending this is casual when it's not. I want you in my life completely. I want to wake up next to you every morning and know you're safe in mine. My grandmother would never agree to move. That apartment is her home. Then I'll make sure it's protected and maintained, and she can visit whenever she wants. But Emma, I need you here. With me. Please. She should say no. Should insist they slow down. Take time. Be rational. But looking into his eyes, seeing the vulnerability there, Emma realized she didn't want rational. She wanted this, the intensity, the certainty, the man who turned her world upside down and somehow made it better. Yes, she said. I'll move in with you. The smile that broke across Dante's face was worth every complication that would follow. 2 weeks later, Emma sat across from her grandmother at their kitchen table, hands wrapped around a cup of tea, trying to find the words. Papa, I need to tell you something. Her grandmother set down her own tea, eyes sharp. You're moving in with the boyfriend you've been hiding from me. Emma's mouth fell open. How did you? I'm old, not blind. The flowers that arrive every week from expensive shops. The way you dress differently now. The nights you don't come home but text me you're safe. Papa reached across the table to take Emma's hand. I knew the moment you came home from that dinner with a school friend 3 months ago. You had the look of a woman who'd been kissed well and often. I'm sorry I lied. You're sorry you got caught. Her grandmother's smile was knowing. Tell me about him. The truth this time. So Emma did. Not everything. She didn't mention guns or crime families or the way Dante's world operated in shadows. But she told her grandmother about a man who'd come into her life unexpectedly, who protected people fiercely, who was trying to transform his family's legacy into something better, who loved her completely and wanted to build a life together. He's dangerous, Papa said. It wasn't a question. Yes, but not to you. Never to me. Her grandmother was quiet for a long moment, studying Emma's face. Your parents would want you to be happy, Baobei. Safe and happy. Can he give you both? I think so. He's already given me more safety than I've ever had, and he makes me happier than I thought possible. Then you have my blessing. But, Papa's grip on Emma's hand tightened. If he ever hurts you, if he ever makes you less than you are, you come home. This apartment, this life, it's always here for you. You understand? Emma's eyes filled with tears. I understand. Good. Now, when do I meet this man properly? And don't say you haven't planned it, because I know you have. Dante met Papa the following Sunday, bringing flowers from petal and stem, and speaking to her in careful, formal Cantonese that he'd clearly been practicing. Emma's grandmother interrogated him for 2 hours, asking pointed questions about his intentions, his family, his ability to provide for and protect her granddaughter. Dante answered everything honestly, within the limits of what he could reveal. He promised to keep Emma safe, to respect her independence, to never make her choose between him and her grandmother. When he left, Papa turned to Emma. He's good to you. Very good to me. Then I approve. But I'm keeping the apartment. You'll need somewhere to run when he inevitably does something stupid that men always do. Emma laughed, hugging her grandmother tightly. I love you, Papa. I love you too, Baobei. Now help me with dinner. Your man is coming back in an hour, and I want to feed him properly. See if he can handle real Chinese cooking. 6 months after the wrong delivery that changed her life, Emma stood in the kitchen of Dante's townhouse, their townhouse now, arranging flowers for a dinner party. Papa was visiting, sitting at the kitchen island offering commentary in rapid Cantonese about Emma's technique. Dante entered, kissing Emma's temple before greeting her grandmother with respectful formality that still made Papa smile. The guest will be here in an hour, he said. Lauren just texted. She's bringing someone she wants us to meet. Please let it be a normal person. Emma laughed. I can't handle another one of her attempts to set you up with appropriate company. I think she's given up on that since I'm clearly taken. His arm wrapped around Emma's waist, pulling her against him. Besides, I found my own appropriate company. She just happened to deliver to the wrong address. Best mistake I ever made. Best mistake either of us made. Papa watched them with knowing eyes, sipping her tea. You two are disgustingly happy. It's unnatural. You love it, Emma said. I tolerate it. There's a difference. The doorbell rang. Dante went to answer it, returning with Lauren and a man Emma didn't recognize. Tall, professional-looking, clearly nervous about meeting Dante. Everyone, this is James, Lauren announced. My boyfriend. James, this is my brother Dante, his girlfriend Emma, and Emma's grandmother, Mrs. Chen. The introductions were made. Dinner was served. Around the table, 2 couples who'd found each other against all odds, and a grandmother who watched over them all with fierce protective love. Emma looked around at the life she'd built from a wrong address and a man with a gun. It wasn't the life she'd planned. It was dangerous, complicated, built on foundations most people would never understand. But it was hers, and it was real, and it was worth every risk she'd taken to get here. Later, after everyone had left and Papa was settled in the guest room, Emma stood on the terrace overlooking the city. Dante joined her, wrapping a blanket around her shoulders against the autumn chill. What are you thinking about? He asked. About funeral flowers and wrong addresses, and the fact that I'm completely, ridiculously happy. Any regrets? Emma thought about everything that had happened. The fear, the danger, the way her entire life had transformed. Not a single one. Good. Because I have something to ask you. Dante turned her to face him, and Emma saw the small velvet box in his hand before he could even open it. Her breath caught. Emma Chen, you delivered to the wrong address, and somehow became the most right thing in my life. You've made me want to be better, to build something beyond violence and territory. You've given me a future I didn't know I wanted. He opened the box, revealing a ring that caught the city lights. Will you marry me? Emma's hands shook as she reached for his face, pulling him down into a kiss that tasted like tears and joy and absolute certainty. Yes, she whispered against his lips. Yes, yes, yes. The ring slid onto her finger, perfect fit, like it had been made specifically for her. Maybe it had been. Maybe Dante had been planning this for weeks, waiting for the right moment. I love you, he said, holding her close. I love you too, even though you held a gun on me the first time we met. Especially because I held a gun on you and you still gave me a chance. They stood wrapped in each other as Chicago spread out below them, a city of wrong addresses and right moments and the strange ways that fate brought people together. Emma had knocked on the wrong door at midnight with funeral flowers and fear. She found protection, safety, and something far more valuable, a man who saw her worth and loved her fiercely. A life that was dangerous and beautiful and completely, perfectly hers. The wrong address had led her exactly where she needed to be. Home. 1 year later, Emma stood in petal and stem, now under new ownership hers. Dante had helped her buy out Michael, transforming the struggling shop into a thriving business. She kept the name, honoring her parents' legacy while building something new. The bell above the door chimed. Dante entered, as he did most afternoons when business allowed, bringing coffee and stealing kisses between customers. Mrs. Castellano, he greeted her, still clearly delighted by the title. Mr. Castellano, she replied with a smile. Their wedding had been small. Lauren, Papa, a few trusted friends. Nothing that would draw attention or put Emma in danger. But it had been perfect, full of love and joy and the promise of a future they'd build together. I have a delivery request, Dante said, pulling out his phone. For the Henderson family. Margaret's son wants flowers for her birthday. He asked specifically for you to design the arrangement. Emma took the order information, remembering the funeral flowers that had started everything. Full circle, from that wrong address to this moment. I'll make something beautiful, she promised. You always do. That evening, Emma delivered the birthday arrangement to 2841 North Astor Street, the correct address this time. Charles Henderson thanked her warmly, pressing a generous tip into her hand. As she walked back to her van, Emma glanced 6 doors down at 2847. The townhouse where she'd knocked with shaking hands and funeral flowers. Where a man with a gun had changed her life completely. She pulled out her phone and texted Dante, just delivered to the right address. Feels wrong somehow. His response came immediately, come home. I'll make it feel right again. Emma smiled, climbing into her van, no longer battered and old, but new, with petal and stem, premier floral design, painted professionally on the side. She drove through Chicago's streets as the sun set, heading toward the townhouse that was home now. Toward the man who'd held a gun to her chest, and then held her heart with infinite gentleness. Toward the life she built from fear and flowers and the courage to knock on the wrong door. It had been the best mistake of her life, and she'd make it again in a heartbeat. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you love the story, check out the other videos on your screen now. I think you'll really enjoy them. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. See you in the next story.